Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon. Today we're going to continue our journey with two-hand single tails or two-handed whip work, and we're going to drop back and revisit dragon tails. I recently acquired, this was my original dragon tail. It's made out of black leather. I recently acquired a second 4-foot dragon tail from dragontails.com, and I'll have the link in the description below if you're interested in ordering from this particular vendor. You need they don't have to be a matched set per se, but you need two dragon tails that are exactly the same length. So whether they're two 3-foot dragon tails or two 4-foot dragon tails, I wouldn't recommend going longer than 4 feet. I like 4 feet because I think it has a little better flow than a 3-foot. 3 foot's handy if you're at a house party or in a small dungeon and you don't have room enough to throw a 4-foot. But if we look at those 4 techniques that we started our journey with in whips, the 4 basic techniques for dungeon play, bow and arrow, okay, and you could do that as a towel crack and get away with it with a dragon tail. I don't teach it as a tail crack because when we move into snake, bull whips, signal whips, if you throw that type of single tail with a tail crack style, you're going to get a marvelous crack at the end, but that whip's going to come back and hit you quicker than it rolled out. So I teach it as a bow and arrow, leave it out. The other static throw we teach is over the shoulder, leave it out, bring it over your shoulder, leave it out. You can come over either shoulder. Horizontal is the first dynamic technique we teach. And then, of course, the forward figure 8, which is my favorite, okay? And any tail, any whip that ends with one tail is a type of single tail. So these dragon tails are single tails. But when we pick up and do two-hand work, we're going to use our two-hand work and develop patterns that have roots in those same 4 techniques. Well, now, obviously, with 2 hands, I can't throw two-handed bow and arrows because it takes 2 hands to throw a bow and arrow, but I can come off the shoulders. So if I come off the shoulders, I can come off one shoulder and then the other shoulder. Alternating, I'm going to call that alternating off the shoulder. And you want to practice that where you're bringing the whip or the dragon tail or whip straight off your shoulder. Think of it like a 2x4, and when it gets to the end of its travel, giving it a thumb push. You don't want that whip to come up and come down. You don't want your hand to come up and come down and it to be thrown in an arc. You want it to come straight off the shoulder and end at the tip. So when I'm doing that two-handed, alternating, okay, I can do it two-handed at the same time. Now when you're doing it two-handed at the same time, you have options. You can focus on the center and try to get both tails to come together at one point, or you can focus on keeping them separated and having your left tail on the left shoulder and your right tail on the right shoulder. So let me see if I can demonstrate that. If we go to a single point, or if we keep them separate to left and right shoulder. Okay, single point. Sometimes I'm actually getting them to cross. That's not my intention. My intention is to try to get them to make a nice V shape in a single cluster, and then the other option is to have one on the right and one on the left shoulder, okay? Now we can do that alternating. We can do that together, single point, and then separate. So the other patterns that we can do two-handed, well, if we can do a horizontal with one hand, we can do a horizontal with two hands. So that horizontal just represents from the release point to your target, it represents a geometric radius. So once we found that radius and found our toe line on the floor that's going to give us accuracy with one hand, then do the same thing with the other hand just to check your toe line. Once you have it with both hands, then you can have both hands going together. Now, horizontal's the same way. We can do together. Together would be I throw them at the same time with the goal of having them reach the target or reach the back at about the same point in time. So these are together timing. We can have separated timing, which is a little more difficult. I'm still working on separated timing, but separated timing, you would have them go in different directions, and you can see I'm not doing very well at demonstrating it. So horizontal for me at this point in my journey, together is much easier than separated or even balanced timing. And then the third technique, we've kind of abandoned bow and arrow, so we demoed over the shoulder and horizontal. Horizontal together works well for me right now. The other technique is the forward figure eight. So I recommend alternating. You start with the forward figure eight with your dominant hand, then throw it with your non-dominant hand. Really focus on the non-dominant hand to keep it well under control. And then when you're ready to do them together, start your non-dominant hand first. And we can do together timing, which is what I'm doing now, where I'm doing forward figure eights, the dragontails reaching the target at about the same time, and then we can do separated or staggered timing. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and there's some separation. And then balanced timing for me in my journey is a little harder. I'm going to try to do that, but with balanced timing, you just open that gap between the strikes up where there would be a longer pause between the strikes. So if you're able to do together, separated, and balanced timing, you can provide a real wide variety of sensations doing two-hand dragontail work. I only started two-hand work maybe about a month ago, so I'm going to get much better with more practice. But I encourage us to take this journey together. If you don't have two dragontails, then source two dragontails. It's probably the most inexpensive way to get into two-hand work as a signal or snake or bullwhip. At least a leather one would cost you quite a bit more money than dragontails will. As always, thanks for watching Whips in the Dungeon.